Well, remember when I said the third episode of Strange New World Season 2 was pretty good, and then the fourth one was even better? And I thought, wow, could this possibly be a trend? Well, the answer is no. And upon further reflection of episode 3, there were aspects of it that I thought they did well for what it was, but there's a lot of problems there. But one of the, I guess, sort of positive things was the admission that this is alternate timeline Trek and that sort of thing. And so it doesn't really matter, which is also another thing I thought they could do a plot where Pike discovers that's not his future. He's not going to end up in that chair. I think they should probably do that with what they're doing. It's probably all too late to do it because of the damage already done to the brand, to have some sort of exploration of alternate possibilities and to make a series out of it and that sort of thing. Had they done well with the property, had they done a Star Trek show that people liked, they'd be more open to experimental things like that in the hands of people who actually have grounding in sci-fi concept and whatnot. They clearly don't here. And they rely heavily on emotional scenes, which could be satisfying when you have characters who are actually in love with each other but are too scared to admit it to each other or themselves. Yeah. So that's what they keep going back to, and that's what the time travel episode with Lady Khan and Kirk, and then of course, and it's like the actress, look, I'll give it, she did a good performance there. She's deeply wounded and hurt by what happened, and she's lost him, even though there is a Kirk in her timeline. He doesn't know her, and she's all alone, and she can never talk about it, and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, but overall, it's a problem. So a similar situation happened in this episode. So you have, once again, Spock and Chapel, and they even had Chapel, like, it's uncomfortable for her to be around Spock because how she feels for him. So she's looking to join a Vulcan Science Academy, which, look, you obviously have a thing for Vulcans. Maybe you need to get away from them. But she was going to leave the ship and do that. And that's one of those things, but there's no reason to follow on Nurse Chapel's original story where she meets her husband and then he disappears on that ice planet and dies and gets replaced by an android and all that stuff. And then she meets Spock and gets a crush on him. No, this is different. This happens much earlier, and for whatever reason, she's on the Enterprise already. So, hey, sky's the limit on whatever they want to do with all that. So, no, that's just something like it's more indication of where she's at. Meanwhile, Spock is supposed to meet with his mother-in-law for his pending nuptials with T'Pring. So you get another T'Pring episode, and of course, in some scenes they kind of get the Vulcans right, and then in others immediately blow it all. The mother-in-law, for the most part, seemed to maintain her Vulcanism. Her husband didn't. He's played off as a comical character, but way too much. And even smiles a couple of times. I'm like, nah, you messed up there. So, but T'Pring's mother's a bit of a bigot. She doesn't want her daughter marrying a half-breed and all that stuff, and doesn't like humans, and particularly doesn't like Spock's mother, despite Spock's mother just being absolutely hot. That's the highlight of the show. Boy, Mia Kirshner still got it. Wow. Yeah. And she put it on display too. That was nice. Anyway, so the deal was that Spock and Chapel had to go do this mission on this moon, and the mysterious disappearance of some race and whatnot, I forget. And you almost get to a strange new world here. It's just an old dead moon, apparently, or something like that. Somewhere near Vulcan, I guess, is where they were. But anyway, the lost people of called the Kevorkians. Kervovians or something like that. I don't know. But apparently they evolved into energy beings and other godlike people, what have you. And they exist in this sort of space-time warp. And at first I thought, good God, already another time travel episode? But no, that's not what happened. They got too close and sucked into it and crashed. And then Spock wakes up in the sick bay. The Kevorkians, ironically enough, had saved them from the damage they suffered in the crash. But they didn't understand Spock's physiology, which you'd think they would, but I guess they detected the human DNA within him and thought he had been so badly damaged, so they mimicked the total human physiology of Chapel and corrected it. So Spock wakes up completely human. He doesn't have to wear the ears and all that stuff. Oh, and it all becomes a joke about his emotions and everything. But of course, it's human emotion, so it's not as dangerous as it would have been for a Vulcan to lash out and whatnot. And so it's all this nonsense. And then, of course, Pike. Oh, guess where Pike is? You guessed it right. In the kitchen. And he teaches Spock how to cook and all that stuff. And then for the first time, Spock is experiencing the joy and sense of seasoning and all that stuff, you know. And then, of course, boy, he's really open and emotional towards to Chapel. You know, he gives her a hug and all this stuff, and she's like, you know. But at the same time, she feels responsible for what happened there. That he's not really Spock anymore, and she fell in love with the real Spock. So she and her besties, Uhura and you know, the pilot girl whose name I keep forgetting. They decide to help her. So they go into the warp. And, of course, the pilot girl is the better pilot, so they don't crash. And they go into the green screen room and do a weird, you know, psychedelic light show and talk to the aliens and say, hey, you screwed up and you got to fix him. So they give her a prescription, and she shows up to give it to Spock. Meanwhile, he's going through all these Vulcan rituals, and it's silly because he's human now, so it doesn't quite work. So they had to give him some makeup and fake ears and all that stuff for him to pretend to be Vulcan. And for the most part, it works out, even though T'Pring's mom still doesn't like him because, you know, she's bigot and all that stuff. But Chapel shows up to give Spock the medicine he needs to regain his Vulcanism, and he's about to tell her that he loves her. Yeah, and she can't bring herself to hear it, so she injects him before he can get the words out. And then already, mentally speaking, he's back to being a Vulcan. It'll take a while for his ears to be restored and all that, but you know, so he's fine. And then he eventually, after all that, he ends up telling off his stepmother. I mean, mother-in-law to be, you know, and admits he was fully human the whole time. Whatever, you know, and then finally expresses how much respect and love he has for his mother. She's all weepy and, you know, because all the stuff she went through, because she, for whatever reason, I don't know, she fell in love with Sarek. How the hell that happened? Poor lady, you know. You sure can pick them. But anywho, and that's the deal. But then T'Pring is, he tells T'Pring, I kept it from you. I shouldn't have. And she's like, well, damn, yeah, you should have said something. And I don't feel good about this, that you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. And it's a bit of a plot hole. But why wouldn't he? You know, I mean, she could know it. They were going to keep it secret from the nasty mother-in-law and everything, but so T'Pring is like, well, I need to rethink this. So she decides we need to take a break from each other. So Spock says, immediately runs over to Chapel, and they get it on. And that's how it ends, because they're making out and stuff. But of course it doesn't matter, because this is, again, alternate timeline. So in this timeline, Spock and Chapel get it on. Even though in the original one, yes, Chapel definitely had quite the attraction to Spock. And It's quite heartbreaking for her, you know. And Spock, you know, I mean, he cared, but he felt sorry for her, really. But there was no indication that he had the same feelings. He certainly had feelings for other women throughout the series, especially Marriott Hartley, you know, in her cave girl outfit. And then what's her name? You know, the Charles Bronson's wife, you know, on the Spore Planet. Yeah, she was an old girlfriend from school. And then when he got shot full of dope and from that flower, oh, he had his way with her, didn't he? So things like that. But for poor Christine, yeah, it didn't really happen for him. But, you know, hey, who's to say you would feel differently if you were an alternate version of yourself? But it's too much of Spock being a joke. There were jokes at the expense of Spock in the classic show and stuff like that. But it's a bit overdone in this one. A little too much. And because it is alternate timeline Trek, then that's the out for any of the stuff that they're doing. Like I said, if you were going to do a real Pike series, Pike would be the main focus of it. Number one would be one of your main characters, and then I suppose you bring in a third, whether it's the Doctor or you make up your engineer or what have you. But Spock himself would be there, but he would always be more of a background character, you know, alongside the level of Chekhov or Scotty or something like that. You know, he gets an episode here and there, but not one of the, like he is. He's basically in the position that Spock always was in Trek, and you know, that wouldn't work because you've got all this character development that you would see in the original series, but this is supposed to be years before that and that sort of thing. But with alternate timeline, well, whatever. So that's the deal with it. It's still damaged by what happened before with it, the idiocy of STD and all that. And then, my God, the first 2 seasons of Picard, that pretty much killed it. Whatever potential you might have had. And this is just sort of teasing the idea of a Pike series, and it's never really going to get there. Plus, they have the little trappings of sci-fi, but they don't ever really get to it. So here, oh, what if Spock became human because of some shenanigans? And it's just like the dream he had in the previous season where his Vulcan and human self were fighting each other, you know, in a recreation of the old show and all that. Yeah, so this was a dumb episode, not worth the trouble. So, kind of bad because like the last one, it was very simple, very basic, and they probably should pursue more of that. But I think it was just a fluke, and probably not going to get any better. So anyway, there you go. The scenes between the two, yes, poor Christine, you can tell her heart's breaking and all that. Now she gets what she wants. Where will it go now? I don't know, but they perform it well, like it's believable that they actually do care about each other and all that. Yeah, it does make Spock a bit of a creep. I mean, he's pursuing this marriage, but he's really in love with Christine Chap. So, should have broke it off some time ago, you know. Of course, he's, you know, Vulcan and confused and doesn't know how to handle his emotions. But, you know, whatever. So, there you go. Oh, it was called Charades because in order to buy some time, Pike was trying to teach the Vulcan in-laws charades. Giggle. Tee-hee. Giggle. Oh, and he did have the green shirt on. Remember when Kirk would wear that green shirt? Only it's this alternate version of it. But, yeah, he wore that. Yeah. Anyway, there you go.